Hi, I'm Adam Horton, and this video is going to teach you how to play Dominion and also how I like to teach Dominion. Normally the first question I ask is, have you ever played Magic: The Gathering? Most people who are interested in playing Dominion have at least heard of Magic. Then I explain that Dominion is kind of like the combination of the two different parts of the Magic game. The first one where you're at home building your deck, and then the second one when you're at the game store playing your deck against your friends and trying to win. Dominion, you do both of those at the same time. So you're building your deck while you're playing your deck. The object of the game is to get the most victory points. The victory points are the green cards here. Notably the provinces. The provinces are worth the most points, 6 points. In a two-player game, there are 8 provinces. Usually, if you get more provinces than your opponent, if you get 5 provinces, you're going to win the game. And if you don't, you're going to have a hard time winning the game. So, let's begin. At the beginning of the game, your deck starts out with 10 cards, and they're all bad. You got 7 coppers, you got 3 estates. Coppers are worth money, estates give you points. You're going to shuffle your deck together at the start of the game, and you're going to draw 5 cards at the start of your turn. So, here's how your turn goes. The first part of your turn is your action phase. I'm going to skip that, we'll come back to it later. Second part of your turn is the buy phase. The buy phase, you play your treasures, meaning you put your treasures on the table. You say, I'm playing 4 coppers. Each copper is worth $1. Up in the corner tells you how much it's worth. So you play 4 coppers, you have $4, and now that means you can buy 1 card with a cost of up to $4. You can buy any card, any 1 card, as long as it costs 4 or less. So let's just ignore this part of the table for now, and we can say you can buy a silver, or a copper, or an estate, or a curse. Don't buy the curses, by the way, they're bad. So let's just say we'll buy a silver. Great. The next part is the cleanup phase. Everything you played, what's in your hand, the cards you bought, it all goes to your discard pile. Cleanup phase, okay? And then the last part is you draw. You draw 5 cards for your next turn. So there was A for action, B for buy, C for cleanup, D for draw. And the reason we draw at the end of our turn is so that we can be looking at our turn and thinking about what we're going to do on our next turn while everyone else is taking their turn. Great, so we'll do our next turn. Skip the action phase, we don't have any actions. Then we'll do our buy phase, play our treasures. It's important to stress that, playing your treasures means putting your treasures physically on the table. That's an important part. And a lot of the times during the first game you're going to be correcting mechanical things that your new opponent is going to be doing. This is probably the most common and the most important thing to be doing. Make sure they're actually putting their treasures on the table to play them. If they're not, it's going to lead to some bad habits, which may not be so incredibly important here with the cards we start out with, but there are cards where everything matters, so getting all the mechanics right immediately is very important. It's going to set you up for success long term. Anyway, we have 3. The silver costs 3, by the way. The cost of the card is down here in the corner. So the silver costs 3. We have 3. Let's go ahead and buy another silver. Now, that was our cleanup phase, and now for our draw phase. Wait a second. I don't have any more cards to draw. What do I do? Whenever you need to draw cards, and you don't have cards to draw, you take your discard, you shuffle it, and that becomes your new draw pile. So now, here's my new draw pile. I'll draw 5 cards. Great. So this may have answered the question you had about why am I spending $3 to get a card that only makes me 2? Well, that's because you're not really losing the coppers. They're not gone from your deck. You still have their buying power around. Because once we shuffle the deck, we'll get to reuse them. Also, when we shuffle, these glorious, delicious silvers that we bought are in that deck as well. So normally, in the beginning of the game, when you shuffle, you're improving the quality of your deck because you hopefully have bought better cards than the crappy ones that you started with. So now, when I was making 3 and 4 on my previous turns, now I'm making 5. Great. Okay, let's talk about the action phase now. This is an action card that costs 5. So we have 5. Let's go ahead and buy it, but let's pause for a moment and talk about what all these action cards do. And when I talk about what the action cards do, I like to give an example because it really helps illustrate what's going on. So let's say this is my hand, and it's our action phase. We've got an action card in hand. Let's say we have the smithy. So when you play an action card, you put it on the table and say, I'm playing a smithy, right? Putting it on the table. And let's talk about what all these bonuses do. Whenever an action card tells you plus cards, you take that many cards from your deck and you put them in your hand. So Smithy gives you plus 3 cards. We're going to take 3 cards from our deck and put them in our hand. Holy crap, we have a huge hand now. This is great. I have $6. I can buy lots of really great stuff. Smithy's super great. So that's what plus cards does. Let's talk about Village. So when you play a Village, you get plus 1 card. So it replaces the card it took in your hand. And then you get plus 2 actions. When a card gives you plus actions, it means that you can play additional actions that turn. Normally you only get to play 1 action per turn, but if a card allows you to take additional actions and you have actions in your hand, then you can play more than 1 action per turn. Great. So if I play the Village, I draw 1 card to replace it. And now I have 2 actions in my pool. I can play 2 actions now on my turn. Great. So if I played a Village and then I played a Smithy, so let's say I drew this Smithy. Now I've got that huge hand, but now even if I have actions in my hand, I can play them because I have an action remaining. So that's super great. So that's Village. Let's talk about Market. So Market has a whole bunch of stuff on it. We already know what card and action do. Gives you plus 1 card. You draw a card from your deck, you put it in your hand. Gives you an action, means you can play 1 additional action on your turn. So it replaces the card and the action that it took to initially draw the card and initially play the card. Super great. And then there's 2 more things. So let's talk about this coin down here. This coin, along with your treasures, is what determines your total buying power for the turn. So now when I play my Market, and I draw my card, and I have 5, well, I have 5 plus the additional 1 that the Market gives me. So that means I have a total of $6 on my turn. So when you're computing your buying power, you'll want to total everything that came from your action cards plus your treasure cards. Finally, Market has this thing plus 1 buy. So remember in our buy phase, it told us how we can buy 1 card that costs up to the amount of money we have. Well, if you have additional buys, you can buy more than 1 card. So if I have 2 buys, I can buy a total of up to 2 cards as long as I have enough money to pay for all of them. So in this case, I would have $6 in 2 buys. I could buy up to 2 cards that cost a total of up to 6. So I could buy a gold, which costs 6, and then copper, which costs 0. That would be fine. Or I could just buy the gold and then forfeit my other buy. That's totally fine. Or I could buy 2 threes. I could buy the Village and the silver. Or I could, I could leave money left over, or, that's fine too. So that's what plus buys are. The important thing is plus buys are really good when your hands are so awesome that buying just 1 card at the end of it doesn't capture how awesome it is, so now I want additional buys. That's what plus buy is for. So Market, we get 1 of everything. It's pretty good. There's a couple of other cards. So there's Militia here. Gives you $2 for your buy phase, just like the Market gave you 1. This gives you 2, and then it says each other player discards down to 3 cards in hand. So I've been sitting here staring at these 5 cards thinking about what my next turn's going to be. But if you play a Militia on me, I have to select my 2 least favorite and get rid of them so I only have 3. And now I've lost $1 worth of buying power. So if you want to make friends, don't get the Militia, but it's pretty good for winning. Finally, let's talk about the Oasis. The Oasis gives you a card, action, and $1, so it's a lot like Market. Only instead of giving you a plus buy, it tells you to discard a card from your hand. So you play the Oasis, you get the card, the action, and then you have to discard a card. Well, I'll discard this one. It just goes into your discard, and now I've got 1 plus 5 equals 6, so I could have $6 in the 1 buy on my turn. Great. So we've explained what all the action cards do. And now it's time to just play a game of Dominion. So I only have these 5 Kingdom cards, and they're pretty carefully selected. They do certain things, they don't do other things. There are a lot of mechanics that are not showing up in this first game of Dominion, and that's on purpose. The purpose of this is just to get them playing the game, taking turns, seeing how a game of Dominion goes in a quick way, so that they're actually understanding the rules and that the mechanics that we're going to be correcting all of the time, probably, are going to become muscle memory, so that now the next time we play, they're introduced to more things and they're not focused on all of the mechanics. So in this game, they're going to learn, oh, I want to play my non-terminals before my terminals. Any terminal action is something that doesn't give you at least plus 1 action, so the Smithy's a terminal action, that's what I call it, the terminals. And then anything that's not a terminal is a non-terminal. So you want to play like your Villages and your Markets before you play your Smithies, for example. Also, they're just going to be learning how to when to shuffle, and then like, you know, you want to build up before you start to green, and then they're also going to learn what it feels like to buy provinces, because, you know, that's the point of the game. And that does kind of get lost in first game of Dominion when we're dreaming about these action card combos. You know, we still need to buy green cards. And then they're going to feel what it's like to have green cards clog up your deck. For the first game, I like to play only big money, but I open Smithy Silver. So I will play a pretty mediocre version of big money, and I will just try and empty the provinces. I'm going to try and win, but I'm going to try and win only with Smithy and Silver. So at the end of the game, almost all of the time I win doing this, because, you know, it's hard to play a focus strategy when you're still learning the game. But at the end of the game, I'll show my deck composition to the opponent. I'll sort out all my greens, my treasures, and then I'll have my one Smithy. And then I'll go over it and I'll say, by the way, this is what I did. Money and victory points are pretty good, and so you need those to win the game. On the other hand, almost all of what I did, the treasures and the victory cards, that's available every game while this stuff changes. So, you know, this is kind of a baseline, and if your strategy, which involves a whole bunch of shenanigans, isn't going to beat something that's available every game, then you should rethink how good it is. Granted, you know, there's a lot of things we both could have done better, but, you know, that's always something that you should think about, because this is always available, and it's not the best strategy in the world, but it's okay. After the first game of Dominion, usually they want to just play a whole bunch more. They realize a whole bunch of things they could have done better, and that's also an appropriate time to point out that this box that's been sitting on the table and we've been staring at the entire game is full of a whole bunch of cards that we didn't use. And so every game of Dominion, there's 250 plus of these guys, and we pick 10 of them to play with. So there's a whole bunch of replayability, a whole bunch of mechanics that are out there that can add complexity or interaction to the game, but you don't need to learn all of them. So if there's time, if they want to play another game, I'll point out the cards that we'll use in the next game, but that's another video. So yeah.